Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go pack go. Ain't show with no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will.
Hello, welcome to Lombardi's Legends podcast. It's Dane, it's Wags. We are back for week 2. Super pumped to be here as always. So thanks folks for joining us. And Packers get their home opener this week against the Indianapolis Colts. It's going to be one heck of a matchup. There's a lot to get to tonight. But Wags, first I got to check in, man. How you doing? How you feeling after this week 1? Are you ready for this opener at Lambeau or what?
I am ready for the Green Bay Packers home season opener for sure. Dane, I'm doing great and really happy you're back. Thank you. Made me go solo on Monday, did the best I could, but we are a much better show with your presence. So glad to see you back, and let's get into it, man. We've got a lot to cover. Certainly we won't be looking back too much on week 1, as I already recapped that, but I think the big thing is just let's start in the injury report. It's Jordan Love. And while I don't think either of us will expect Jordan Love to go this week, certainly some gamemanship at minimum happening, and Jordan Love did not go on the injury report, or I'm sorry, he's on the injury report. He's not on the IR. So that's the biggest good news. Certainly there was a lot of fear that this could be not only a much bigger injury, but even with the initial report, it could be a 3 to 6 week injury. It doesn't seem like that is the expectation based on the fact that he's not on the IR. Frankly, it sounds like he's day to day, and even if he doesn't go this week, there's certainly a good chance that we could be seeing Jordan Love return sooner than later. So, Dane, what is your overall feeling on Jordan Love, his status, not only for this week, but as we move forward?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, when that injury happened late in the game, I try to be optimistic, but when you see a knee pop, right, you kind of go, this isn't great. So I kind of resigned myself to the fact that, he might be done for the year. And then, reports coming out and the severity might be half the season, right? I saw, up to week 11 at one point was thrown around, and now we're talking day to day. And those are Matt LaFleur's words today. Is kind of remarkable. So first of all, I'm super optimistic about that. It's also a great reminder to the Packer fans that, one game does not make a season. I know that some fans were pretty upset after the game. I thought the Packers played, they're sloppy, but they're good. They're a good team. I think really what I'm looking at right now is, can we minimize how long Jordan's out? LaFleur made mention that he needs to be able to protect himself out there, and B, he doesn't need to practice to play. So those are the two keys here. So Wags, I'm guessing he's not going this week. I think that Willis is going to be starting for the Packers here, but I do think the long-term projection, and by long-term, I mean, hell, even into week 3, week 4, we could get a Jordan Love appearance, because it does seem like he's trending closer to that. They would have put him on the short-term IR, right? If they thought that he was going to be out for an extended period of time. I get what LaFleur's doing. You want to make the opposing team guess. There's no reason to rule him out now if you're the Green Bay Packers. But for all intents and purposes, I'd be very, very shocked if Jordan plays this week, and I think it's more likely week 3 or maybe week 4.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement, and I mean, at least there's a sense of optimism that this isn't going to be something that we're going to be waiting until week 5, 6, or 7 for Jordan Love to be back, and I hope that's the case. Obviously, injuries aren't linear, so we've seen that happen where guys come back too soon, they tweak that same injury, or something else that's related, or something completely unrelated as they're compensating for an injury. We've seen quarterbacks usually are able to return from injuries like this sooner than players in other positions. Jordan's pretty mobile, but he's not someone that you're necessarily going to completely rely on his legs in extending plays, sure. but he could still be a difference maker out on the field, even if he kind of limits his mobility. And the Packers set up a game plan in an effort to minimize the risks that he's going to have to feel like he needs to be as mobile. So while I don't think, and I just stick to what I said just earlier, that Jordan Love's not going to be playing this week, it's not entirely impossible. We saw Aaron Rodgers play with a similar injury, and he didn't miss a game. So a couple of years ago. So it's not, I don't think, highly likely, but it's not impossible that the Packers could come up with a game plan for Jordan Love to keep him protected and to minimize the risk that he's going to have to use his legs as much as he more normally might. So, Dane, I think the only other injury, there's a couple actually that cropped up here. One that we've known about for a while, and I'm unsure if we're going to see Marshawn Lloyd this week. He's been now a limited participant in practice going back to prior to last week's game. He did not suit up in week one. And Emmanuel Wilson, I thought, played really well. It was one of the guys I highlighted on our recap show on Monday night. And frankly, I think I would probably just give Marshawn Lloyd another week to ramp up unless they truly feel he's ready and fully healthy. He didn't get a lot of practice time in camp. And with as good as Manuel Wilson looked spelling Josh Jacobs out there last Friday, certainly you need depth at the running back position, but I'd be just fine rolling with that until we know Marshawn Lloyd is truly ready to go. But what's your feeling on his status, and is it possible that we see Marshawn Lloyd make his NFL debut on Sunday?
I think it's possible, but I don't think they're rushing him back. It's just, to your point, Emmanuel Wilson last week, Wags, played really good football. He was hard. He was running really hard. I thought he had great vision. He was able to get what they blocked for him and some, right? So obviously that's not going to negate wanting Lloyd back sooner rather than later. But I'd be a little surprised if the Packers use one of their 45, or 46 active roster spots to have Lloyd back this week. I do think it's going to be a heavy running game this week, just if Jordan Love's unable to go. So maybe with the caveat of, maybe that helps boost it a little bit, but I think it's more likely than not that we're going to yet again have a Jacobs and then Emmanuel Wilson are kind of the two workhorse backs, with Jacobs really leading the charge, and then again, much like Jordan Love to some extent, we're probably going to have to wait a week or two to see Lloyd in green and gold on the field, but. I'm looking at the injury report as we're kind of looking at it. I mean, outside of Jordan Love, and Jordan Love's obviously the biggest one. I think that Marshawn Lloyd's really the biggest one for the Packers. Do you agree? I think that he's probably the most at risk of not making or of not playing outside of Jordan Love, or does anybody else stick out to you on this injury report, Wags?
Just keeping an eye on Quay Walker popped up here. It's still a limited participant in practice, but groin popped up on the injury report. Wasn't listed on the injury report on Tuesday. So I don't think there was a high level of concern. And Coach Hafley's weekly press conference today, he talked extensively about what they need to do to unlock Quay Walker and the athleticism, the difference-making capabilities he brings on the defense side of the ball. And I know he's just speaking in general, not specifically to this week's matchup, but there doesn't seem to be a high level of concern there. However, soft tissue, something pops up, it's worth keeping an eye on for sure. On the Colts side, there's, I think, some more potentially impactful guys on the injury report, and we're recording this here on Thursday night, so things could certainly change depending on if these guys are able to get out and practice tomorrow. But Julian Blackmon, starting safety, and led the team in tackles in week one against the Texans. DeForest Buckner and Kwity Paye, two guys on a defensive line that combined for 3 sacks in week one against the Texans. So these are 3 potentially impact players for the Colts that haven't practiced all week. And certainly it's not an all-inclusive thing, but if even one or two of these guys is unable to go on Sunday, Dane, let's just hear what your thoughts are on how that could impact this Colts defense against the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, Wags, I'll tell you what, especially when we start looking at Kwity Paye and with DeForest Buckner, I mean, this is a Colts defense that had trouble stopping the run last week, right, against the Texans. So now to lose out on a couple guys along that defensive front in a game that projects to be one where, theoretically the Packers are running the ball a fair amount, whether it's with the running back or hell, even with the backup quarterback playing, the Colts being down depth along that defensive line can be something really, really problematic for them. So I think that right away, Wags, presents a pretty massive problem for the Colts. Should one or both of those guys be out? And then, their safety, Wags. I'll tell you what, Julian Blackmon, he's not a bad safety, right? He's an aggressive guy. He's a guy that can play around the box a little bit. He's a guy who can, cause headaches, especially for less experienced quarterbacks. So anytime starters are out, everybody's good in this league, but there's levels and there's tiers of good to great in the NFL. And him not being on the field would be a huge, huge boon for Packers offense that's down, very likely, QB1.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more. So, Dane, let's get into some of the key matchups then in this one. And why don't we start on the defense side of the ball for the Packers against this Colts offense. And so I think, first of all, let's just talk about Anthony Richardson, a second-year quarterback for the Colts. I think most folks out there have, if any casual NFL fan has probably seen some of the throws that Anthony Richardson made last week, including just an absolute dime, a 65-yard strike to Alec Pierce. Ball, I think, traveled 65 yards in the air, hitting him in stride, and good coverage on the play. But you see something like that, and it's just like, wow. On the flip side, was still battling a little bit of accuracy concerns. That was something that plagued him last year. And, so I think it's going to be interesting to see. He can definitely use his legs. The Packers have lots of experience. I know we've got a new defensive coordinator, but new scheme, but we've got lots of experience going against uber athletic quarterbacks in the last couple of seasons that can really hurt you with the legs, but maybe aren't as accurate through the air as what they would typically like to see. I don't know what Anthony Richardson's ceiling is or what he's going to be as an NFL quarterback 2 or 3 seasons from now. He's certainly got a lot of potential, but I think right now, today, he's a guy that we could just dust off some of the tape from Justin Fields last year, and let's figure out how we can focus on, limiting the big plays and force them to actually throw the ball a lot. We said that in some of the matchups last year against Fields and others, by the way. I want them to actually throw the ball a lot because if the Colts are having to throw the ball a lot, I think that's a winning formula to force turnovers. And then it also means that the Packers are probably playing with a lead. And thirdly, it limits what he can do to you on the run game. And certainly, if he's dynamic as a runner, another guy that we'll get to in a minute, and Jonathan Taylor becomes a little bit mitigated as well. So easier said than done, Dane. But what are your thoughts on how the Packers can, specifically try to limit or slow down what Anthony Richardson might try to be doing to them?
Yeah, I mean, it's make him beat you through the air, and he's good, right? But I think Justin Fields is a really, really solid comparison at this stage in his career. I just full cards on the table. I think Richardson's a much better quarterback, like all around quarterback, than Justin Fields is, and I think his career is going to show that. But this week, right, hasn't played much. He got injured last year, folks. So he only played 5 games last year. So this is one of his first 10 NFL starts is next week, or this week, I should say, against the Packers. So let's keep that in mind. Extremely athletic quarterback, as you mentioned, massive arm, right? He's got a cannon for an arm, but you said it. He's erratic. He can get the ball can go all over. So he can gut you on the ground. He can gut you through the air, but Wags, I know for a fact he's consistent running the ball, right? If he takes off, he can fly. When he's throwing the ball, he can get you, but we can get him too. So the Packers, and I thought the Packers did a phenomenal job against Hurts last week of keeping him in his lane for most of the time, right? They really kept contained on Hurts. I thought they're overall about as good as you could play for most of that game against Justin Hurts, as far as keeping him from being able to be too mobile in the pocket. If the Packers can replicate that and then really make Richardson, stay on his ground and make those throws and not throw turnovers, then I think the Packers are going to have, or if the Packers are able to do that and see if he can, not throw turnovers and be accurate with the ball, I think that's the Packers' best chance to win this game. But I also think, Wags, that he might get you a couple times through the air, but with this aggressive Packers defense, I do think we have the ability to take the ball away as well. He threw an interception last week. I think he's due for more, just with his style of play, especially early in his career. So Wags, take away the run, make him beat you through the air, and then let the chips fall where they lie. But I like this Packers defensive matchup. I like the aggressive nature of this defense, but the Packers have to stay true. If Richardson starts gutting you on the ground, that's just going to open up bigger and bigger passing lanes for him, and we need to really avoid that if we can.
Yeah, Dane, what do you see when we highlight Xavier McKinney? I thought he looked really good out there in week 1, and if not for that ice rink of a field, I think he had a beat on a couple other plays that he could have broken up past, maybe even another interception, etc. But thinking about trying to limit those big plays, the Colts have not the greatest wide receiver core, but they've got some speed on the outside. Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, who I mentioned the long touchdown last week, and as third-year guy. So out of Cincinnati, and he's someone that I remember the Packers looking at in the draft process a few years ago, and a lot of folks like. So they've got some guys, they've got speed, and clearly Richardson has shown the ability at times to be able to beat you for those big plays. But that's why I wanted to highlight Xavier McKinney. What did you see from him in week 1, and what can he carry? It's not all on him, but just thinking about this as a matchup, potential problem for the Colts and their wide receiver core and their ability to strike those big plays versus a guy that I think clearly showed why the Packers went out and spent and bought him in. I know it's only one game, but I've seen a lot and certainly liked a lot of what I saw from Xavier McKinney in week 1.
Wags, I mean, talk about a field general out there, right? I mean, he's a guy who just every single snap he looked to be in the right position. He looked like he completely has a grasp of this defense. He looks like the primary guy communicating back there. He looked like somebody that's just not even solid football. Wags, he's got so much talent, and he's going to be so important to this defense. So that's really what I thought Xavier McKinney brought last week. And I actually, watching the game, I went, oh, that's why they paid him so much money, right? Just watching him, because he's clearly the stabilizing force for this defense. And I think you're right that the field notwithstanding, I think that he, probably is able to force maybe even another turnover. So that's what I expect from him this week, especially against an inexperienced quarterback. This is where veteran defensive backs feast often, is on these younger quarterbacks that try to take a risk, try to fit the ball in a spot that maybe they could have fitted in college. But you're not facing Xavier McKinney every week in college. So that he's the kind of guy that he'll hit you. But he'll also be kind of that leader of the defense. He reminded me of a little bit. Their style of play is different, but it was kind of like that year where the Packers just got torched, week in and week out, and then they signed Adrian Amos. and when Adrian Davis came to Green Bay, and you could just see kind of that like steady force on this defense. Not the same style player, but maybe the same kind of similar impact, where it's almost like, oh, we've got the adult in the room that's going to make sure that everything's okay on the back end. That's what I think McKinney is going to be big picture. But I think this week, he serves probably one of the biggest concerns and biggest red flags for the Colts. And he's going to be somebody that I'm guessing they're trying to identify at the line of scrimmage a hell of a lot and try to avoid as much as they can.
Yeah. Dane, can we talk a little bit? I'm going to talk about another couple key matchups for the Packers, and then we'll get over, I think, to the last one that I had in mind for the Colts before, if you have any other guys to mention. Rashawn Gary this week, I think on the stat sheet, a little bit quieter last week. And I think one of the things that both Coach LaFleur and Coach Halfway mentioned is that there was some opportunities last week for the defensive line to maybe not get the sacks, but to be able to deflect. The ball was on the ground. There was some opportunities to maybe strip the ball that it was shown a little bit more than I'm sure some of the offensive coaches on the other opposition cared to see. But they looked at the tape and just said, hey, like, we could have actually created a few more turnovers, and the guys up front could have been part of that. On the flip side, they also recognize what you just said, which was they did a really good job of staying in the lane against a guy like Jalen Hurts. And maybe that doesn't mean as many sacks on paper, but it's part of the game plan, and they've got to be able to still put pressure while having that lane discipline and composure. So I don't think that a lot changes this week. I think Jalen Hurts is a different type of player in how he can hurt. I think he's a little bit more composed than a guy like Anthony Richardson is. That said, some of the, and maybe this isn't fair, but some of what Anthony Richardson can do that might be described as erratic could also be described as extremely fast moving and athletic. So it's a different challenge. However, I just want to ask, if you're a guy like Rashawn Gary, how do you stay patient and try to still make an impact on the game, knowing that you're going to continue to see double teams, you're going to continue to see, things that you need to stay consistent to the game plan, but also wanting to make an impact on the game on the defensive side of the ball. So this week in particular, Dane, how can our star defensive lineman, Rashawn Gary, make an impact and make a name while making the right reads and staying true to the game plan?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It's got to be so frustrating, right, for somebody like Rashawn. Anytime you're playing a guy that can scramble and do the things that these quarterbacks these first 2 weeks can do, but I think for him, Rashawn, of all the guys, is probably somebody that stats are great. Of course, dude wants to get a bunch of sacks, right? But I think that he's going to do what's asked of him to the best of his ability. He's kind of that ultimate team leader on the defensive side. So Wags, I expect him to go out and do what he needs to do to try to keep contained for this. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's trying to pin his ears back a little bit more this week as well, because there are going to be opportunities there. And that's the thing, especially with this defense, and something that we're learning, right? And this is maybe with Rashawn, but also just broadly speaking, is, I think over the last few years, we've been used to a Packer defense that's a little bit more passive at times. Now this is a more attacking defense. So, while we don't want to get burned by the quarterback using his legs, at the same time, I got to think that in obvious passing downs and certain situations, the Rashawn Gary's, the Preston Smiths, the JJ Barres of the world still have license to just pin their ears back and go try to hit that quarterback. So I think that there's going to be a mix and a match there. I'll be curious to see how Halfley schemes this one up this week. We're still learning what he looks like. But to try to answer your question, I mean, I think for Rashawn Gary, it's patience. I think that the Packers offense, the receivers say that the ball finds people with good vibes, I think is what Jaden Reed said. And I believe that sometimes is the same for pass rushers. The quarterback's going to find that pass rusher to a certain extent, but you've got to be playing within the defense. And I think Rashawn Gary's patient enough to do that. But we're going to have to see what, this week bears, of course.
Yeah. Last guy, I think we should certainly highlight Jonathan Taylor. Didn't have a big impact in the game last week against the Texans, but we know what he can do, especially folks that also follow Wisconsin Badgers and the storied career that Taylor had at Wisconsin. So he's someone that's healthy and certainly is not someone that you want to allow to start to get a rhythm, get some steam. And if he's doing work, it just makes everything else that much harder. So what did you think of the Packers run defense in week 1, and what can they do to try to shore up some things on that front, and see if they can try to at least somewhat slow down Jonathan Taylor here in week 2?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that the run defense last week, Wags, there's some ups and downs to it. I thought that there were some really good snaps that I was able to see. There are some snaps where, we just frankly got beat at the line of scrimmage, and it allowed Saquon Barkley to just take off and get a big gain. And the Colts ain't no slouches along this offensive line either. They've got a Pro Bowl center, they've got a Pro Bowl guard, they've got 2 veteran offensive tackles. I mean, this is an offensive line that can win. And right? They can win at the point of attack. They can win at the line of scrimmage. So I think this week against Jonathan Taylor, part of it is being able to control the line of scrimmage, but another huge part of it, Wags, and tell me if you disagree, please, is tackling. The field was sloppy, but the Packers also had a fair number of missed tackles that I counted, even with the field notwithstanding. So I think that we need to be a little bit more sure tacklers, because this is a Packers defense now where you might not have anybody behind you if you miss the tackle. That there's a tug of war with how these defenses work, and in the old the old scheme, you might have a little bit of help on the back end of things. Now, a lot of times you're just going to be kind of out on your own. You're expected to do your job, and if you don't do your job, there could be a huge blow up. I think against Jonathan Taylor, it sounds simple because tackling such a big part of football, but Wags, need to tackle the ball carrier. And the Packers just need to, quite frankly, win at the point of line of scrimmage against a really, really good offensive line. It's as simple as that. So, I expect a heavy dose of Packers cycling guys in, but I'm really circling TJ Slayton this week, Wags, against the Colts. He's somebody that I know you and I both really like. He's a guy who's a really, really good run stopper. And I thought he had an okay game last week. But this is a week where, especially, he's been, I believe we're going to his 4th year, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, this is kind of his opportunity to really seize that run stopping role. I thought he had a really positive step forward last year. And now, he's going to be going into a contract year after this year. I'd really like to see TJ Slayton do his part and take on doubles and do what he needs to do to make Jonathan Taylor's game just a little bit more challenging this week.
All right, beautiful. Well, there's lots of other guys we could talk about, but let's jump over to the offensive side of the ball. Key matchups for the Packers on offense versus Colts defense. We already highlighted a few guys that are on the injury report and aren't practicing for the Colts that, frankly, would probably be in some of our key matchups. So, if they don't go, I know there may be a couple other guys that we can turn to here. But, Dane, let's just start with the Packers. If Jordan Love is out, Malik Willis, what can we expect realistically, and what's the right game plan and approach to put him in a position to lead this Packers offense and have some success here on Sunday?
Well, I mean, the question I have is, how much of the playbook does Malik know? It's going to be a limited offense, right? And I mean, we just traded for him a couple weeks ago. So, Malik Willis has not been on the roster for very, very long. And these schemes and just the language alone that he's going to be expected to be able to regurgitate out in the huddle to get guys lined up is Herculean effort. So instantly, I expect this offense to be fairly pared back. And I think that knowing that we're going to see smaller route trees, we're going to see him probably zeroing in on one or maybe two guys. I expect some shorter passes and Wags. And I want to hear your take on Malik Willis really badly, because we haven't had a chance to talk about this offline much, but he's going to he's kind of like a poor man's Anthony Richardson. How about I just put it that way? He's somebody that he's got a big arm. He's a guy, he was a 3rd round pick, so he's got that draft pedigree. He can use his legs, but he can be very erratic passing the ball. So I think that the Packers offense is going to be trying to minimize mistakes for him, try to control the game with the run, and then let Malik Willis, take off with his legs, or try to find the one or maybe two reads and try to keep it as simple as humanly possible. There's not a magic bullet, I don't think, this week with a quarterback that just doesn't have the experience in this offense, at least like currently that he's had. He's still trying to get up to speed on that. But that being said, I think that the Packers just really have to lean into his attributes, and his attributes are he's got a big arm, and he can move around the pocket and use his legs. So if the Packers can keep it as simple as possible and let him be athletic and try to win a football game while trying to minimize mistakes, that's going to be the best chance I think we have a win in this ball game.
Yeah, I mean, listen, not a guy that has a ton of experience, and he's got to be able to protect the football. So I think that's the first thing. That's a little bit cliche, but this is a Colts defense that gave about 159 yards rushing to Joe Mixon last week. And granted, CJ Stroud is not starting at quarterback for the Packers, so that's not something that the Colts are going to have to be thinking about if Malik Willis is out there. But I would really like to see us just lean on our new free agent acquisition, Josh Jacobs. He got it going a bit in the second half. It wasn't finding a lot of room to run in the first half, but I think this is a talented offensive line. And if the Colts are a little bit dinged up, even if both those guys we mentioned are able to play, they may not be 100%. Let's not try to win the game in the first quarter and lose the game in the first quarter at the same time. Play smart. Let's game manage this a little bit. Get something going on the ground that opens everything up. This isn't Jordan Love where we need to get out and attack in the vertical passing game right away. I don't want to get too cute with this. I would like to see, you said maybe it's some shorter route trees. Frankly, I'd love to see our tight ends get a little bit more involved this week, usually with an inexperienced quarterback. Those can be opportunities if you're rolling the pocket. I know Luke Musgrave didn't get a ton of snaps. I think he was kind of game planned out a little bit last week. Tucker Kraft got the lion's share of the snaps at tight end position at the line of scrimmage. But Luke Musgrave is a big target. And I think for a guy like Malik Willis could be someone that gets a little bit more of a look this week and some more opportunities. Not to handcuff all of the dynamic weapons we have at the wide receiver position, but that's where things get a little bit more complex for a quarterback that doesn't have as much experience in the offense. So if you want to take a couple vertical shots, Malik Willis has got the arm. Go for it. I'm not as worried about taking risks for something like that. And heck, if you are able to draw a penalty flag or, even get a connection on one of those deep passes, great. But you can live to see another play. What I don't want to see is, Malik Willis standing in the pocket and trying to deliver a bunch of intermediate throws. That's where a lot of the complexity in most NFL offenses lies. That's the difference between a really top tier quarterback and guys that are fringe or backup quarterbacks in this league, is they're usually not able to be as accurate or make the throws in that part of the field. And that's where most turnovers happen too, quite honestly. So I guess it remains to be seen how much of a game plan they'll put together for Malik Willis to be able to use his legs as a runner. But let's roll the pocket as we need to. we can take a few shots deep, but let's kind of keep things low complexity, as you said, but especially lean on Josh Jacobs. And let's see if this can be a little bit of a war of attrition, and maybe the defense can win this one for us, force the Colts into some mistakes, give us some good field position, capitalize on some opportunities, and don't just shoot ourselves on the foot on the way for offensively. So I think that's pretty much in alignment for Malik Willis. Some other key matchups, Dane, that I'd really like to take a look at for this one, though. Let's talk a little bit about that tight end position.
Yeah.
You were surprised that Luke Musgrave wasn't as involved as he was last week. So I don't know if I could classify this as a key matchup so much as let's just take a minute to talk about that situation. What was your read on that, and what do you think we should expect to see starting this week with Musgrave and Kraft? Is that going to be? Is this just Kraft is ahead and that's the guy, or is this kind of going to be more of a week to week matchup situation, and we could see some more opportunities for Musgrave this week?
Yeah, I think it's total matchup situation, Wags. I don't think there's anything more than that. There just like some weeks we're going to see more of Dontavian Wicks, right, than maybe Romeo Dobbs, for instance. Like I think it's the same kind of thing. I think that the Packers probably really like the matchup Kraft had with somebody on the other side against the Eagles. If anything, Wags, I think it's more likely we're going to see more balance of two tight ends on the field. A little bit more, and I just wouldn't be surprised if Musgrave's mixed in and Kraft, right, or they're kind of just getting rotated in and out, and it might even be a hot hand situation of who's handling blocking assignments better, who's the one that's seeing the field better that day. So I have no concern for Luke Musgrave or Tucker Kraft, right, that one's really over, quote unquote, the other. I think it's going to be probably when we look back at the end of the year, barring any injury, I'd be pretty surprised if we're not looking at a 55-45 split or thereabouts. I think we're just going to see, we're going to get the kind of like one game, one guy, one game the next, but a pretty balanced approach. Now, I say all of that, and if this is week 4 and we're still talking about Kraft having a lion's share, then obviously something's different. The Packers see something there, but I think Luke Musgrave showed so much last year that I don't see a scenario where all of a sudden, after what Luke showed, especially when he came back from injury and the way that he's dealt with so much, I'd be pretty shocked if the Packers have decided to just kind of move him to a clear number 2 role. If nothing else, I think that they're probably going to be a little bit more balanced. And do you agree, or do you think that this is more of a Tucker Kraft has taken charge of this position?
Yeah, no, I agree. It remains to be seen. It was a little bit of a surprise to me, but certainly we expect a lot from Luke Musgrave. By all accounts, he had a solid preseason. He's healthy. It was Kraft that was coming in with the injury, so I'm not going to read too much into it after 1 week, but it was a little bit of a minor surprise to me that with how that played out. So we'll certainly keep an eye on that moving forward, and I'm hoping that Musgrave can get a little bit more opportunity, because we saw what he was able to do last week. Guy just always seems to be open in the pass game, and that could be something that we really need out there in the field this week. Mm-hmm. Dane, I think I'm going to jump into, unless you had any other key matchups that you wanted to hit on the offensive side.
Only one that I really want to highlight, Wags, is the first round pick for the Colts. Latu, the defensive end, had a really big week last week. He's going to be going against Rasheed Walker, probably a fair amount this week. It's just something to keep an eye on after a strong first week for him. Sheed's going to have a guy who's really talented on the other side of him. Every week, we're always looking at the pass rushers versus offensive line. We've seen how pass rushers can just completely blow a game up. So I think Rasheed's more than up to the task, but just one of those things you really want to circle is when a young talented pass rusher is going against a young talented offensive tackle. It's just, it's not sexy for fantasy football purposes, but from a football perspective, it's just going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Okay, beautiful. Before we go into X factors and score predictions, Dane, we didn't even talk about this before we went on air tonight, but I've got a new segment that I think you're going to appreciate. And it's called At the Start of the Fourth Quarter, We're Going to ... And so let's start with, at the start of the fourth quarter, we're going to be cracking a beer and cheersing if ... What is your answer to that here for this week?
So at the start of the fourth quarter, we're going to be cracking a beer and cheersing if ...
Yes.
If Malik Willis has not had a turnover yet.
Okay, that's a pretty low bar, but I will take that.
Yeah.
I think my answer is going to be if the defense has forced the Colts into 2+ turnovers. I think the Packers are going to be well positioned, and that's going to probably be a real telling part of the game story and situation. Dane, if at the start of the fourth quarter we're pulling our hair out, ... what's going on? What's gone wrong?
Jonathan Taylor is just destroying the Packers on the ground game and just gashing him, and the Packers defense can't get off the field.
Yeah, if the Packers defense can't get off the field, I'm going to go with Anthony Richardson is just gashing the Packers, because we've had so many nightmare performances against mobile quarterbacks over the years that I think Packer fans, you and I included, just have instant PTSD anytime it starts happening. And we'll know right away if it's going to be one of those days. So that'll be a real hair puller, I think, if that happens. We're hoping it's not. All right, Dan, I hope you enjoyed it.
I love this. Yes.
Let's get into our X factors. I'll let you lead off. You can pick whatever side of the ball you want. Who's your first X factor here this week?
We started with the defense on the pod. I'm going to stick with the defense for our first X factor. I'm going to go with Lucas Van Ness. A defensive end for the Pack now. Somebody first round pick last year. Wags, he was kind of fourth in the rotation in week one. We had Rashawn Gary, we had Preston Smith, we had JJ McBarre, and then Lucas Van Ness was kind of a distant fourth in snaps. We need Lucas Van Ness. We need to be able to generate pass rushers, and again, especially against athletic quarterbacks like this. We saw some glimpses from Van Ness last season, but this is kind of, we need that second year leap from Van Ness. If he can have a big game, or if he can just start to put together a little bit more consistency, I'm going to feel a little bit better, and I think it's going to help this defense out a heck of a lot more. So for that reason, Lucas Van Ness is going to be my X factor for week 2.
Okay, I love it. I'm going to stick on the defensive line. I'm going to go with Carl Brooks as an X factor here this week. I think sometimes there's guys, second-year guy coming home, home opener in Green Bay. It's going to be an opportunity, I think, to poke the football loose. Carl Brooks has shown a nose for doing that over the course of his young career. And so I'm just going to say it. If he can knock that football loose here this week, that's enough for me to consider him an X factor in this game. So I like Carl Brooks being able to come in and make an impact in the snaps that he gets. I think this defensive line is going to be hungry to show that it's not all bark and no bite with this group this year. And certainly we've got some headliners ahead of Brooks that could make some impact plays too, but I'm going to pick him as a potential X factor here this week.
That's a great selection. I mean, I think he could be that one of those breakout guys along this entire defense, right? He seems to really have a huge skill set. I love that, Wags. Offensively, who you got? Who's your X factor? I'm putting it back on you.
I'm going to kind of lean into what I was just talking about. I'm going to go with Luke Musgrave this week. And I guess for the simple fact that he was not involved very much at all last week, which again, it's a little bit of a surprise, I think, to myself and some other Packers fans. So, but I think he's going to need to be a guy that could be a little bit of a safety valve for Malik Willis this week. And certainly the Colts are still going to have to respect and cover all the other weapons that we can put out on the field. But I think truly Musgrave could be the guy that could be the target, that could be that safety valve. And so I'm going to go with Musgrave. I think he gets a bunch more targets this week and can certainly open some things up, even if it's a limited and a scaled back version of what we normally see from this Packers offense. I think that could be just enough to keep the Colts off balance and give some room to run for Josh Jacobs, Emmanuel Wilson et al., and maybe even Malik Willis to have a little bit of room to run himself. So I'm going to go with Luke Musgrave as my offensive X factor this week.
I love it. Yeah, no, and big opportunity for him in week 2. And Wags, yeah, I mean, the obvious one's Malik Willis for an X factor. We're not choosing him. That's not how we roll here. But you know what I'm going to do? The other safety valve, I think, this week, our new stud running back, Josh Jacobs. If he can run the ball, if he can, because it's not just getting in the end zone. Well, that would be really nice. It's also, ball security. It's also being able to tilt the time of possession for this team. All of these things that Josh Jacobs has done tremendously well in his career up until this point. He comes to Green Bay here. Unfortunately for Josh, he's played with quarterbacks that have been inexperienced a heck of a lot in his career up until this point. And, hopefully soon Jordan's back, but I think that Josh Jacobs, we're going to ask for him to just run the rock. I thought he had a really, really solid second half last week. I think that, some of those early game jitters got shaken. And now his first game at Lambeau Field, what better opportunity for Josh Jacobs, Wags, than for him to just take over a ball game early in his tenure here in Green Bay and get Lambeau Field rocking. So I think Josh Jacobs is a huge difference maker for this offense. And I think that he's a tremendous X factor this week because he can just run the rock. And I think he can gut a Colts defense that already had challenges against running back last week. I think he's faster than Mixon. I think he's more talented than Mixon. I love our offensive line matchup against his Colts defensive line. So for all those reasons, Josh Jacobs is my X factor this week on offense.
Okay. I like it. If you will allow me, I'm going to throw one other name out there as maybe a secondary offensive X factor, and I'll just throw Bo Melton out there. And just thinking about, we've got backup quarterback, maybe a little bit more connection on the reps that they have gotten in practice together. You see that all the time. And frankly, I think if Bo Melton is as likely as anyone to be that home run vertical threat, if we are able to make that connection this week, just keep an eye if that's Bo Melton, Malik Willis connection. Sometime in that second quarter, Packers break that out and we get a deep pass play for Bo Melton. So just be on the lookout for that one, folks. All right, Dan, let's get into score predictions. I'll lead off this week. I made you go first last week. I'm not going to pick against the Packers. Are you kidding me? I don't care if we've got your backup quarterback going. It's going to be a lower scoring affair. I've got the Packers taking care of business in this one. 20-17, close game. Defense does the job, is able to force some turnovers. Packers do just enough on the offensive side of the ball, put some points up on the board, and come away with a win in the home opener, 20-17 over the Indianapolis Colts.
Wags, so for many of you I know listen audio, but if you watch the video, my shock face when Wags said this, I have 2016 Packers winning, so we're almost in fuego here today for all the reasons you said. I don't think it's going to be a pretty game. I think it's going to be kind of an ugly game. There's probably going to be some more flags again. These teams kind of work out the kinks the first few weeks of the season, but I think the Packers defense looks better. I think that they're able to make the second-year quarterback make some mistakes. I think Jonathan Taylor does a lot to make us pull our hair out, but I think that we do enough to limit him getting into the end zone. I think that the Colts are going to sputter and struggle in the red zone when they get there a little bit, and I think that this Packers offense is going to do enough on the ground to take care of business against the Colts. So 2016 Green Bay Packers win, and we get to 1-1.
Yeah, we might even get some points from the defense this week as well. So, all right, we're there. You got it. Dane, anything else before we close out here?
No, it's just super fun. It's so good to be back. Sorry I wasn't able to make it for the recap pod, but back for the season. Super excited to be talking Packers all year long. And let's hope Jordan Love get better. Jordan, we miss you already. But this is a team that doesn't lay down. It's a team full of guys that can play ball. So really excited, Wags, for the home opener at Lambeau Field this Sunday.
Okay. And actually, I should ask before we sign off, if the very unexpected happens and Jordan Love does play, do you care to make a different prediction on what the final score would be in that scenario?
31-21. The Packers put up a hell of a lot of points on the Colts. The Colts, the Packers don't have the time of possession as much because the Packers score faster. So the Colts get a couple more points out of it, but the Packers win going away 31-21.
All right. I just wanted that to be on the record so that if Jordan Love, we find out he's going to play, we don't throw out this entire preview episode. So thank you for that, Dane.
Love that.
Folks, as always, be legendary and go Pack.
Go Pack, go.
Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go Pack go. Ain't showing no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will